with its walled tombs that house the dead, and towering above everything, a large stone statue of Christ with outstretched protective arms. The journey continues through a fascinating mountain world, the summits of which seem to touch the clouds. In 1975, this region was designated as a nature reserve. This was largely due to the Peruvian mountaineer Cesar Morales Amao. And it's here that the strangest plants in the world grow, the Puya Raimondi. In this remote area, llamas wait patiently at the roadside, dressed in colourful scarves and hats, always ready for the next photo shoot opportunity. The breathtaking views of the snow-covered 7,000-metre-high mountains make the remoteness of this region more bearable. But after only a few minutes, the weather changes. Suddenly the sun disappears, and it begins to rain, or perhaps it could even snow. The barren ground quickly absorbs the first raindrops, and the plants are slowly covered by a fine covering of snow. The flora of this high mountain region is extremely hardy and used to the sudden onset of wintry weather. The Indios who live in the highlands have a hard life, and for 4,000 years the llama has been their indispensable beast of burden. Finally, we have reached the village of Chavin de Huanta, on the high plateau beyond the mountain pass. Suddenly, the weather has changed once more. The village is situated at an altitude of 3,200 meters, and in the 1st century BC was the most important center of pilgrimage in Peru. The first hunters and gatherers settled here, farmed and bred cattle. After a 4-hour drive, the ruins of Chavin de Huanta, the remains of one of the oldest cultures in Peru. This region contains more than 3,000 years of history. However, these huge blocks of stone were only discovered in the 16th century. Due to the lack of a writing system in this period, little is known of Chavin culture. Engraved stone snakes, birds, and predatory wild cats have been among the most commonly found images of this mysterious, ancient, and highly developed culture. In addition to a well-laid-out canal system that led rainwater into a river, the Rio Mosna, the ground itself contains many hidden treasures. In the oldest part of this area, there are entrances to a subterranean world. Here, an assortment of passages and rooms extend down almost 7 floors. In the darkness of the corridors, there are a total of 35 granite heads that are known as the cabezas clavas. Scientists believe that during the religious ceremonies that took place here during the Chavin period, some of the blood that was used in the rituals found its way to this underground location. The human faces of the stone heads that were once nailed to the walls are a bewildering and disturbing sight. The 1,000-year-old secrets of the mysterious rituals that took place in these underground rooms will probably never be revealed. The dim light that illuminates the narrow corridors intensifies the atmosphere of mystique of this early architectural masterpiece. Leaving this place of cult worship, everyone breathes a big sigh of relief when stepping out into the daylight. The Isla Ballestas is a peninsula that's located on the southwestern coast of Peru. It's a nature reserve and a highly successful tourist attraction. A boat trip is a good way to see the coastline, passing by huge sand dunes that reach to the shore. Further on, we pass the rocky coast that is called Guano Island, named after the birds that nest on those rocks and produce guano. Throughout the year, this peninsula is inhabited by seabirds, turtles, and various kinds of sea lion that frequently bask in the sun. In order to protect and ensure the survival of these wonderful creatures, it's prohibited to enter this nature reserve. The tiny excursion boats bob up and down due to the heavy surf that is created by the meeting of 2 different ocean currents in front of the peninsula. The valley oasis of Nazca, which played an important role during the early history of Peru, is a desolate area in the south of the country. A small airport is the starting point of a journey to one of the world's greatest mysteries, the enigma of Nazca culture. From a tiny single-engine aircraft, it will be possible to observe huge patterns on the ground that are only clearly visible from the air. For some minutes we fly above green mountains. We take a look to see if we can spot the patterns on the ground. But then we arrive, the first incredibly large image of a monkey. The images of humans, animals and geometric forms are scattered over an area of 1,000 square kilometers and are believed to be the pages of some sort of fantastic historical and astronomical book. Everything points towards the fact that these images were created by the Nazca between 500 BC and 500 AD. These vast illustrations were created by the knee-deep erosion of the red-brown surface scree until yellow sand appeared. "28 kilometers from Nazca is the cemetery of Chowchilla, a place of the macabre. "1,000-year-old bones, skulls and entire mummies covered in tattered clothes sit and lie within numerous compartments next to fragments of pottery. The sleep of the dead was disturbed by unscrupulous grave robbers and, according to early Nazca belief, the reincarnation of the deceased. Unfortunately, little remains of this bizarre culture. Its history has been destroyed by the sands of the desert. The journey on the locomotive El Tren Inca through some of the most rugged mountain scenery in the world promises to provide a fascinating insight into the long-forgotten traditional culture of the Incas. From the town of Puno, where this trip begins, we will travel by train to the famous lake Titicaca and then to Cuzco, capital of the Inca kingdom. The extensive Altiplano, the name of a high treeless plateau, unexpectedly provides us with a splendid mountain panorama. At a slow pace, the old diesel locomotive drags itself along the Puna Plateau, until suddenly, green water comes into view.